Okay, we're going to finish up now, but this is the ultra nerdy part of this lecture. We're going to be talking about the parts of the ear that you could only see by looking at them through a microscope, right? You wouldn't need a whole lot of magnification, but you would see it by looking through a microscope. And that's going to be this part of the ear right here. We're going to be looking at this thing called the cochlea. And if you took that cochlea out and you cut a little chunk out of it so you could see what's going on inside, this is what you would see. So here is that tube that is the cochlea, right? So it'd be kind of spinning this way. And we just cut across it and looked at it through a microscope so you can see what's actually going on. And there are 3 tubes filled with fluid inside of the cochlea. Plus, there are mechanoreceptor cells. There's a lot going on in here. I've got 2 different slides with sets of terms so that we can kind of break things down. Let's talk about the 3 tubes of fluid. So let's go back one. See, oops. When you look at it here, there's 1 tube up there, there's 1 tube there, and there's 1 tube there. They're all kind of wrapped together, but 3 tubes of fluid. Let's start with the Scala Tympani. The Scala Tympani, a timpani is a drum in an orchestra, and it's got a very low tone. It's the one that goes, dum, 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 dum. Kind of like on Jaws. You know that sound for Jaws? It's a little bit like that, right? So I remember a timpani has got a very low note, and so the Scala Tympani is the tube that is on the bottom. The Scala vestibuli is the one on the top, and then in some ways, the most important of the tubes, the cochlear duct, is here on the side. Now, in many ways, it's the most important, but it is the smallest. And it's the most important, so it gets the name cochlear duct because the whole structure there is called the cochlea. Right? Now, kind of existing inside of the fluid that is held inside of the cochlear duct are all of the mechanoreceptors that allow you to hear. And they form a small organ called the organ of Corti. And the organ of Corti is also known as the spiral organ, and I accept either answer, right? So Scala Tympani, Scala vestibuli, cochlear duct, okay? And then the organ of Corti. And remember, the organ of Corti is an area that has quite a bit of other terms we need to know, but it contains the mechanoreceptor cells, the little hair cells that allow you to hear. By the way, those mechanoreceptor cells are these guys right there. All right? Okay. Let's see. More membranes that you need to know. This is the vestibular membrane. Oh, for some reason, I don't have that term. Okay. That's the vestibular membrane. And as long as you know that that's the scala vestibuli, then you'll know it's the vestibular membrane because it just makes sense to call it that. But here's some important stuff. These mechanoreceptor cells here, they sit on a membrane called the basilar membrane. And the base of something is where the feet go, right? If you're going to build a building, you'd put it on the base, or right? So the basilar membrane is this one down here because that's where the feet of the mechanoreceptor cells, that's where they're sitting their feet. Another very important membrane, and I don't have a way of remembering this at all, is the tectorial membrane. The tectorial, okay, maybe I do have a way of remembering it. No, I do. Tactile. When you touch something, your sense of touch is your tactile touch. And these hair cells here they are just barely touching the tectorial membrane. So here's what's going on. When no sound is happening, here are our hair cells, and they're just barely touching there. When no sound is happening, these little hair cells are not bent. But when there is a sound, that sound wave is going to cause this area of the basilar membrane to go upward. Kind of like, imagine if you're standing on a big old trampoline and there's water underneath it, and you got your hands in the air like you just don't care, okay? And then a big wave comes underneath the trampoline under your feet. And that wave, as it goes up, you got to bend your arms, right? So when that wave goes woof underneath it, these cells, they're touching there, so they've got to bend their little arms or break them, okay? And when those arms bend, they send out an action potential, all right? So Scala Tympani, right? Scala vestibuli and cochlear duct, because this is the cochlea. Tectorial membrane, vestibular membrane, tectorial membrane, basilar membrane, organ of Corti. All right, that's it for this week. See you in lab.